Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Caribbean. We are currently, let's see, where are we currently? We are currently overflying Puerto Rico. You can see Culebra and Vieques out there, along with St. Thomas. And there is Puerto Rico. And gorgeous today. Got some puffy cumulus clouds showing up over the field there. We are 18 minutes from the top of descent. As I was sitting down, I bumped my throttles, and so my speed is a little bit messed up, but we'll get that squared away. So we are on our way down to VC Bird International Airport in Antigua. Let's pull up the descent checklist. Landing level is set 60 feet. Fuel is balanced and adequate. Let's see. TCAS. Set our TCAS. TCAS is set for below, which is perfect. That's what we want for the descent. Radars, check CAS. Is clear landing data. Performance tab here. That might come down another knot or two. We'll leave that for right now. And then approach briefing. So what I wanted to do today was do a little soliloquy on Jepp charts. Jepp charts are great, but they are even a lot of instrument rated pilots. They just use the FAA charts. They don't use the Jepp charts. A lot of instrument rated pilots find Jepp charts confusing and more difficult to read. Jepp charts are kind of difficult to read. Are more difficult to read than the standard charts, I think, the FAA charts. But I thought I'd try and help you guys a little bit with these charts today. There's St. Thomas right there, the airport. So first things first, you read Jepp charts left to right, top to bottom, like you do any page in a book. And things are organized in sequence. So when you first look at the chart, the first thing you're going to see is ATIS. And that always reminds me to go get the weather. So let's check the ATIS. ATIS is doesn't make any sense. The weather says, let me see here. Let's check the weather. Weather says 1700 Zulu. It is not yet 1700 Zulu, so I don't see how that can be correct. But we'll go with it. Winds is 090 at 13, gusting 24, so it could be a bit of an adventurous approach today. Try and back those throttles down just a little bit. Remember, in the CRJ, you are You are in control of the speed with your throttles. Alright. Winds are variable 040 to 130, so this should be gusty. Visibility is unrestricted. Light showers. Rain showers in the area. A few clouds at 1800. Broken at 3600. Temperature 25. Dew point 222. QNH 1014. So I'll put 1014 in the backup in the standby altimeter. That way I'll have it to remind myself as we get closer. I always look over here and get my altimeter from backup instrument. Alright, switch over to QNH here. So, temperature 25, dew point 22. I've made this point before, and I'll make it again. When you have a temperature dew point spread of less than 5 degrees Celsius, 5 degrees or less, you can expect what the FAA calls restrictions to visibility. And what the rest of us call that is, well, what they mean by that is any sort of clouds, fog, mist. You are likely to have some sort of impairment to your visibility. So one thing to be aware of. It's also you should also be aware of the trend, right? So if you check the temperature dew point spread like 2 hours before you're supposed to land, and it's 10 degrees, and you check the temperature dew point spread an hour later, and it's 6 degrees, it is trending towards, it's trending towards a lower number, right? Trending towards a lower difference. And the closer those two numbers get, the more likely it is that you're going to have some sort of fog or clouds when you arrive. So it's something to be aware of. Not only what the temperature dew point spread is, but how is it trending? All right, so let's get back to the chart here. So what it is, so you get your here up top. If this ever moves, you have your radio frequencies. This is your approach information. This is your missed approach information. That's your minimum safe altitude. These are your notes. This is the plan view. This is the profile view. And there's your glide slope. And this is all for a non-precision approach. You get these ground speed and descent angle information. This is your runway lighting information. This is your missed approach information again, and your missed approach information is also shown on the chart itself. The missed approach is the dotted line. So the missed approach, you'll notice, is in 3 places. Missed approach, missed approach, missed approach. So that means it's important. Here's your minimums again, your minimums and visibility. Alright, so let's go through this. We've already gotten our ATIS. So this goes in sequence: approach, tower, ground, right? There's no ATC as far as I'm aware. SJU tower, that's not us. So, one of the other things I'll tell you guys about, when you hear, I was watching a stream from XP72, the well-known streamer, the other day. He was flying into Portland, Oregon, and there was air traffic control service in Portland, and whenever anybody touched down, the tower controller would tell them, "Welcome to Portland, on time, 1724, left 1 able, ground 0.9er." And whenever you hear ground 0.9er or ground point anything, the 121 is assumed. And it's most often .9er. It's most often 121.9, but sometimes you'll see sometimes you see something else, 121.7, 121.4, whatever. But if a controller ever tells you ground .9 or ground .7, ground .2, they mean ground 121.2 or 121.4. Just a little detail that probably it's not readily known by everybody, but I don't really know that controllers in VATSIM should be, doing the controls, doing the handoff that way, because I think not everybody is familiar with that. But so this is an RNAV approach. That's important to know, because if it's an RNP approach, this airplane cannot fly an RNP approach. Final approach course is 073. That's important because later on we're going to have, when we're in the terminal area, we're going to have a course right here, and it should be 073. And if it's not, we need to make sure we adjust it with this right here. All right, this is your minimum altitude. On a precision approach, it's your glide slope intercept. On a non-precision approach, it's your minimum altitude. 2,000 feet MSL, mean sea level. 1942 above ground level. Minimum descent altitude here is 630 feet, so let's go ahead and put that in. 630 feet. And you'll see that 572 in parentheses, 630 is what? Okay. And you'll see that 572 in parentheses, that's above ground level. And airport elevation 60 feet, runway elevation 58 feet. And you'll notice 58 plus 572 is 630. So that's what it's going to read in your altimeter, 630 feet, but you're going to be 572 feet above the ground. All right. Let's see here. Minimum safe altitude, MSA, ARP. Now, normally, if it's like an ILS approach or a localizer approach where there's a ground-based navigation system like a VOR, they're going to give you the minimum safe altitude as a 25 nautical mile radius around whatever that ground-based reference point is. Here it says ARP. Now you can look all over this chart. You're not going to find ARP anywhere. You can look all over this chart. You might find ARP on this chart. As a matter of fact, you should. But I don't know that it is there. I don't see it. So what does ARP mean? ARP is your airport reference point, and that's a subjective point they've picked on the airport that is that they use as, saying here's where the airport is. Now, so basically, and 2,500 feet, the way they get that is you get 1,000 foot of obstacle clearance over the highest obstacle within that 25 nautical miles. Right here you see a mountain, 1,464 feet. 1,500 feet is close enough. So you're going to get a minimum safe altitude of 1,000 feet above that. Now, what's the point of a minimum safe altitude? The point of a minimum safe altitude is if you encounter some sort of problem, an engine problem, whatever the case may be, equipment malfunction, whatever it is, and you're trying to, keep the airplane dirty side down, what this tells you is if you stay at 2,500 feet or above, you're not going to hit anything, right? And you do have some leeway below it. It is 1,000 feet above the highest obstacle. But, it's just one of those things to keep in mind. 2,500 feet and above is safe. Now, these are adjustments based on different things that don't really matter to us that much. We're not going to talk about it. Transition level is the level at which the the flight level at which you change your altimeters from standard to local, to the local altimeter setting. Now here it says flight level 40, which in the rest of the world would be 40,000 feet. But in the Caribbean, it's 4,000 feet. I don't understand why they do that, but they do. In the United States, transition level is always 18,000 feet, flight level 180. Transition altitude is same thing in the U.S. It's always 18,000 feet. Get outside of the U.S., you oftentimes will have a different transition level and transition altitude. What's the difference? Transition level is for landing. It's when you're coming down. You would change it from the standard setting to the local setting at 4,000 feet. Transition altitude is for departures. You would transition from the local setting to the standard setting at 2,500 feet. Now that gives you 1,500 feet of overlap where you've got one person flying on local altimeter setting and another person flying on a standard altimeter setting. So I don't quite understand why you would want to do that. It doesn't make any sense to me at all, but that's what they do. Okay, 3 minutes on the top of descent. Let's take one more look at our, yeah, see 137, that's dropped to, and we'll set that. That's what I figured it was going to be. All right, these are notes that are important to go through. This is not something you're generally going to really have to worry about. Sort of classifications of navigation equipment. Let's first take a quick look here at our VNAV page. Go over to and see what our descent info is. BOMAT at 2,500. All right, so let's set our altitude pre-select for 2,500 because we are getting near our top of descent. So when we cross the top of descent, and when we reach the top of descent, which is right here, we're going to go into a descent, which is not really a surprise. And then we'll be coming down to capture BOMAT at 2,500. Let's see the rest of these notes. Caution, high terrain north and south of the aerodrome. You can see there's 590 feet, a little hill there. You get some hills down here. 1,207 feet, 1,464 feet. So there is terrain. Gotta keep an eye out. Unless ATC clearance is obtained for an RNAV GNSS procedure, the navigation and position reporting of all aircraft shall be conducted with reference to the conventional ground-based navigation aids. And what does that mean? Unless they tell you expect the RNAV approach, then what they're going to want is position reporting based off the VOR that's on the field. That's essentially what they're telling you right here. You can see there's a VOR on the field right here. VOR is what we call ground-based navigation, and so they're going to tell you, what's your distance from the ANU VOR. So you might have to. You have to be aware that unless you've been told expect the RNAV 07, they might ask you what's your distance from the ANU VOR. So you may have to readily be able to find that information. All right, we are 5 nautical miles from the top of descent. And the one that's really important, VGSI and RNAV descent angle not coincidence. VGSI, vertical glide slope indicator. That's your PAPI, your precision approach path indicator, which is right here on the left side of the runway. Get that out in a second. But so what they're telling you here is that if you are on the correct descent angle for the RNAV approach, you might not see 2 white, 2 red on the PAPI, which is normally what you're trying to achieve, right? And so if you fly the RNAV approach and you might be right on, the descent angle, in this case there is no glide path because it's an LNAV approach, but you can be right on path and not get too white, too red on the PAPI because as it says here, vertical glide slope indicator and RNAV descent angle not coincident. So that's something to keep in mind. If you see, I don't know what you might see. You might see 3 white, you might see 3 red. And legally, once you see the PAPIs, you can transition to visual if you don't expect that you're going to lose sight of them again, right? Problem is, if you do transition to visual and start using that PAPI, that glide slope, and I'm talking and I went right through my, if you do see that PAPI and you start using it and you somehow lose sight of it, go back into some clouds, go back into some fog or mist or whatever, you then have to go mist because you are visual. You are not following your approach anymore. So my recommendation is to stay on instruments, stay on your instruments the whole way down. All right, we are in the descent. So let's take a look around here. These are your transitions: Elopo, Bomat, Lampkin, etc., etc. We are coming Bomat today. So Bomat 2,500 feet, which is what we've got over here. Bomat 2,500 feet or above. Make sure you can see that, right? We got 18.2 nautical miles from Bomat to Imali. Imali is your initial approach fix. You want to hear something funny? You know what the definition of an initial approach fix is? Get ready for this one. A fix from which the approach begins. Makes sense, right? That's literally the definition. So we're going to cross Bomat 2,500, maintain 2,500 to Imali. Imali, left turn inbound 073 to Bopar, 40 threshold, which is 4.0 nautical miles from the threshold of the runway. Then you got your runway, and then this dotted line is your missed approach. 7.3 miles from the runway to Lidoc, 5 miles from Lidoc to Imusu. Standard right-hand turn holding pattern. Most people would tell you this is a parallel entry, that you would go outbound. You'd cross Imusu, go outbound to 073. Standard rate left-hand turn to come around and intercept 253 inbound to Imusu, and then make a right-hand turn. I do not like. Parallel entries, and I'll tell you why. Parallel entry is the only entry where there's 2 reasons why I don't like them. Parallel entry is the only entry where you're outside of protected airspace, because you are on this side of the inbound course. So you are not in protected airspace. This is the protected airspace. If you're within this airspace, you are not going to hit anything. And I like not hitting things in airplanes. The other reason I don't like parallel entries is because you go outbound on the 073 heading, the reciprocal of this heading. Go outbound for 4 nautical miles, and you make a left-hand turn to come around back to enter the holding pattern. You are making a turn in the opposite direction of the holding pattern that you're entering, right? And that can get confusing. It might not be confusing in a CRJ where the airplane's doing the work for you, but it certainly could get confusing in something like an Islander or a 172, a Warrior, a Mooney, or you might not be flying glass panel, and You've got to make a left-hand turn to get into a right-hand holding pattern. I don't like doing that. And teardrop entries are very, very easy. Teardrop entry into a holding pattern. Outbound heading minus 30. So you cross the waypoint. Outbound minus 30 is 073 minus 30 is 043. Call it 040. Fly 040 heading for 4 nautical miles. Standard right-hand turn. Standard rate right-hand turn to come around and intercept back into Imusu, and you're in the hold. Remember, holding pattern entries are not regulatory. You can enter a holding pattern however you please. Only thing that matters is you enter the holding pattern. You are not required to perform a particular type of holding pattern entry. Do whatever you're comfortable with. I am comfortable with teardrop entries. All right. This is a neat little thing right here. Now, these are recommended altitudes. Nautical miles to runway 07, 5 nautical miles, altitude 1,700 feet. 4 nautical miles, altitude 1,380 feet. 3 nautical miles, etc., etc., etc. Now, when you are at BOPAR, it's going to say 1 nautical mile to 40 threshold. Down here, it's going to say 1 nautical mile to 40 threshold. So that might be confusing, but when you're at BOPAR, you're 5 nautical miles out. Is that true? It's not quite true. It's not exactly true. But when you get to this 40 threshold point, you should be at 1,380 feet. It's a good check. And then when you're at 3 nautical miles, you should be at, I would call it 1,100 feet. You know, I always like to round up a little bit, and that'll give you a good check there as well. It's always good to have this information handy. I'm going to turn on the integrated lighting just a little bit in case we do get into some clouds. I don't want to be searching for what I'm looking at. All right, 17.5. Okay. Remember, 10,000 feet, we need 250 knots. So let's dial that in. Just as a reminder, there is no auto throttle. We have to do that ourselves. It says I'm below the path because I'm below this star. But what I want to be is at Bomet. I want to be at 2,500 feet, and that's what this maroon banana bar is telling me. So I'm quite happy to be there. I'm quite happy to be where I am. Alternate missed approach fix. This is something to keep in mind too. And again, ANU. This is off of the VOR. So 114.5. Let's put that in, because if he might say proceed direct eargar and hold, and if he does, and you don't have eargar tuned in, well, you've got a problem. Switch these over to manual so the system doesn't go searching for whatever ground-based navigation aid it can find. I want 114.5. I'm putting it in nav 1. I'm putting 114.5 in nav 2. So just always, you know, these little details are what make the difference in a good approach. I like backing up everything on approach, right? I don't like hoping that everything's going to work out the way I expect it to. I like having alternate plans in place ahead of time that I can rely on if I need to, and I don't have to do a whole lot of, you know, messing around or reconfiguring. Everything's already set up for me before landing. This is the longest. This is the longest approach briefing in history, by the way. I'm doing this for your to share with you guys now. Let's see here. We are 5 minutes from touchdown. How far out are we? 47 nautical miles. PC bird traffic. American 268 is 50 miles to the northwest, inbound runway 7, BC Bird. All right, let's start slowing the airplane down here. We do that by pitching the nose up. And you can see here also this little blue ball, which tells you what glide path you need to reach this point when you need it, when you need to be there. And okay, so arriving aircraft, I see this number 1 right here. Arriving aircraft will only enter the hold when instructed by ATC for spacing, so there is no hold there, no required hold. Now the profile view, Amali, 2500 to Amali, cross Amali, inbound 073 down to 2000. Once we get down to 2000, I'm going to put the altitude pre-select back up to 2500 so that when we cross Beauport and start a vertical speed mode descent, that it doesn't recapture at 2000 and just stop, right? So if the altitude pre-select is at 2500 and we start descending from 2000, it's not going to capture, which could be a problem for us. So 10,000, we're good on the speed pretty much anyway. Alright, let's turn our lights on. Alright, these are your distances from these points to the threshold of the runway. At Amali, you're 10.9 nautical miles. At Beauport, you're 5.9 nautical miles. Normally, they would be even numbers, 10 and 5, and these are the distances between these 2 points. So it's 5 nautical miles from Amali to Beauport, 1.9 nautical miles from Beauport to 4.0 threshold, etc. TCH threshold crossing height, that's the altitude at which you're going to cross the threshold if you're on the glide slope. This is a kind of a pseudo glide slope of 3 degrees. It's not actually there. This V is the vertical descent point, or the visual descent point. If you get visual contact with the runway or runway environment 1.6 nautical miles from the threshold, then you can make a normal descent and landing without having to do any maneuvering. If you see the threshold or the runway after this 1.6 nautical miles point, you may have to descend. You are going to have to descend at a steeper angle to make a landing at that runway. The other thing is the M, that's your missed approach point. It's at the threshold of the runway. Alright, here's Beaumet. 200 is what I'm looking for. That's my next speed. So I'd like to start slowing down now. And this is your ground speed descent angle foot per minute chart. And what this tells you is, depending on your ground speed, 70, 90, 100, 120, 140, this is the descent rate you're going to have to make in feet per minute to maintain a 3-degree glide slope. Now, we're expecting about 140 knots, so I would expect about 700. It would require 743 feet per minute. We may not hit that exactly. VC Bird traffic, American 268, Beauport inbound RNAV 07, VC Bird. Okay, let's go 1014. All right. So you've got to keep an eye on your ground speed right here and match it to this. Now, I always round down a little bit, so I predict that we'll be at about 140 knots ground speed. I would go 700 feet per minute. I'd go a little less rather than a little more, right? Because I can only dial it in by hundreds. So I can either go 700 or 800. So I would go 700 and adjust from there. Visibility is going to be fine on this approach, I can tell. But you got to keep an eye on your ground speed and adjust your descent rate based on the ground speed. Now, this is what you're going to see in the runway environment. There are runway end identifier lights, which are exactly what they sound like. They are they're white flashing lights at the threshold of the runway that identify the threshold of the runway, the end of the runway end identifier lights. There's also going to be a PAPI on the left-hand side, precision approach path indicator on the left-hand side. Start coming in with some power now. First degree of flaps. Now when that hits 2500, the altitude select. Alright, now I'm going to put it down to 2000 because that's our next altitude. We're right now inbound to Amali. Alright, let me get myself a little bit better organized here. Okay. So, 180 is fine on the speed right now. I just need to bring in some power because I don't want to get below 180. Too much below 180 anyway. Alright. Next speed I'm going to want after this is 160. Alright, so here we come. And this is your missed approach again, direct 2500 LiDAR. So these are your minimums, 630 minimum descent altitude. We are a category C aircraft, so we need 1600 feet of visibility. So what I like to do at this point in the approach, get my chart right here so that I can see this part, but really what I'm looking for is this. I like looking at my altitudes, knowing what altitudes I need. So once we get to Amali, we've only got 5 nautical miles to get down that 500 feet and get not reconfigured per se, but alright, so we've got it for 2000. So once we cross the Mali, we're going to go vertical speed mode down. I'm going to go 1200 feet a minute so I can get down for that 2000 feet. And as soon as we capture 2000 feet, I'm going to put this back up to 2500 so I can make our descent once we cross. A little bit more power. Okay. Five miles from Amali. Once Amali comes within this inner circle, I'm just going to pull this in one more time. I just keep bringing that progressively closer and closer as we get closer in. Okay. Let's go over here to performance. Now I'm going to put VREF is what I want. Okay, thrust reversers is the one thing that I didn't remember to do. Thrust reversers are set. Alright, 2 miles from Amali. Going 30 degrees of flaps now. And once we cross Amali, see, you can see those showers right over the field there. So this might be a real one, we'll see. Be interesting, it's gusty. Once I'm 0.3 miles from Amali right here is when I'm going to start making my descent. And it's fine being, completely in on your on your instruments here, because we are, you know, this is a an approach. So VC bird traffic, American 4268, 10-mile final, runway 07 VC bird. All right. We're coming down here to 2000. Now I should, when this is blinking green, I should be able to adjust the altitude and not have, and it should capture the altitude I've got selected now. I don't think it always works that way. I'll put this up to 2500. Then I'm going gear down, flaps down. We are 2.1 from Amali. Oh, excuse me, 2.1 from Bopar. Keep a real good eye on that speed. I do not want to start getting slow. Ground speed is 120. So we're looking at 600 feet a minute descent. We need some power here. So pretty soon here I'm going to want to back off the power, because once we start descending, it's going to speed up. So there's 600 feet a minute right there. Now, ground speed is 113, so 600 feet is the most I want. Now at 40 threshold, which is in 1.5 nautical miles, I want to see 1,380 feet. I'm keeping my power right where it is. I'm pretty happy. Well, let's add a little bit here. Nah, see, I'm low. I'm low, so I'm going to adjust that up, add some power. Okay, at 3 nautical miles, I want to be at 1,000 feet. I'm already below that. So I'm going to level off here for a second. Bring in some power. Okay. I am visual. I'm going to disconnect the autopilot. I'll put it right back up. Keep that nose down just a little bit for some speed. Not that much.
500. Minimums.
Okay, I'm relatively
400.
happy. except for the fact that I'm not on center line.
300. 200. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
See that little kick out at the end, that with the rudder? Now we go thrust reversers, toe brakes, and we made it. And actually, we made it. Made it a little further. I made it a little earlier than I wanted to. I wasn't intending to be getting off at Bravo, but we're getting off at Bravo. And I'm pretty pleased with that approach. I really am. Little bit of weather, you know, and again, when you keep your eye on that temperature dew point spread, it's something that you will be aware of and expecting. And the one thing that I love on approaches or in instrument flights in general is predictability and not having surprises, right? So you looked at the island from 50, 30 nautical miles away, and it looks bright and clear, and I even said it. Looks clear, no visibility problems. Well, guess what? It wasn't really a problem, I would say, a visibility problem, but I was expecting some obstructions to visibility, because we knew what the temperature dew point spread was, and we knew what that tells us. And that's the kind of information that's really useful, and that's the kind of information that can save your bacon someday. Because it wasn't real far away from being an actual instrument approach. Where you are counting down the numbers as you're descending and looking for the runway. And the thing is mentally, if you're ready for that, it's okay. If you get thrown into that having expected something else, then it can be a problem. And I think we deserve a good parking spot for our landing today. So I'm going to give us prime parking right here. So it's like I said, it's always good to be ahead of the ball game. And expecting what may come and then have it happen, rather than thinking, oh, it's looking great, and then say to yourself, oh geez, now I'm stuck in low visibility and having to make an approach. So APU is on, so let's shut our engines down. And they didn't do it. I had a flight recently where I parked so perfectly. Oh, look at that. Look how close I was. Look how close I was. I parked it so perfectly that they automatically brought out the ramp. jetway. My parking was so good. Not this time, I'm afraid. But I'm still pretty happy with my landing and my parking. I like parking. To me is important. I like. You might call me a weirdo, but I actually like parking well. It makes me feel good. Turn off the passenger light before these people kill me. Alright, leave the hydraulics 3A on. Alright, now we'll open our cargo doors. Open the service door. And we'll open our passenger door as well. Let's see. Everything's pretty much in good shape here. So, all in all, pretty successful flight, I would have to say. Everything's in good shape. So again, I'm trying to think if there's anything that I forgot to mention that I wish I had mentioned. Always good before you land to take a look at the airport diagram and have an idea, like I didn't do, to have an idea of why or where you want to get off. And I would have targeted Charlie rather than Bravo where I made it. But and there's the displaced threshold here, which is what this white bar indicates, and you saw it coming in, the white arrows along this part of the runway, which means you can use these for takeoff, but you can't land on it, so you've got to land here, right? And when you look at this, you've got this 0.9 difference, right? So I remember how I said it's usually 10 and 5. And I would have expected Bopar to be 1 nautical miles from 40 threshold right here, this waypoint, when we were talking about these distances. Like 40 threshold is 4 nautical miles from the runway. I would have expected Bopar to be 5 nautical miles from the runway and 1 nautical mile from here. The reason it's not, that 0.9 right there that's throwing everything off by 0.9, is this distance right here. It's that 2,000, give or take 2,000 feet right here. That's the difference, right? And that's why your glide slope, your vertical glide slope angle, and your the descent rate on the approach is not coincident, because you've probably got a flatter instrument approach, and you've got well, who knows? I mean, I don't know what the it's an excellent question. Let's have a look here at the reference chart and see if we can figure out there's no reference chart.
Captain, all passengers have left the plane.
Let's see here. What I'm trying to figure out is what the PAPI angle is. So the PAPI angle might be steeper. I would imagine, if anything, the PAPI angle is steeper than the glide slope angle for the RNAV approach. Now let's look at the VOR approach chart and see if that tells us. It might. Well, D4 is 3.0, so it's the same. There's the PAPI. It doesn't give you any note about the PAPI here. So it's kind of a curious note. I mean, it's not something that's extremely uncommon to see as a note, that the visual glide slope is different than the vertical descent for the approach. I'm just curious as to what the difference is, and they don't seem interested in telling us. See if this one tells us. This could be why. This could be why right here, the PAPI. See how I said I suspected, if anything, the PAPI is steeper. And see, this is on the RNAV approach, we've got kind of a fake glide slope, right? On this, you really don't. And your MDA is much, much higher, 1,000 feet, which means they're just trying to keep you from hitting anything. And this glide slope right here from this FS07 into the runway, 3.21 degrees. So I would suspect that's probably why there's a difference. In any event, a successful flight. Our folks are off getting a nice rum punch, and we have delivered a nice group of holidaymakers to the Caribbean. So I hope this helped you guys a little bit. And if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the comments section. This is a payware version of this airport, and I think it's not the prettiest airport in the world, but this payware version of this airport is excellent, and I really think it's worth whatever, $10. So anyway, I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we're gonna get back in the Islander soon. I know that that's the preferred plane for most people for me to fly in this channel. We're gonna get back to that. I've just been horsing around with this airplane for a while, trying to dial this in. So I hope you guys are doing well, and we'll talk soon.